Naomi Reed had counted exactly 94 ways to go mad on Epsilon Station 7, and by her 17th month of isolation, she'd contemplated at least 30 of them before her morning coffee. The station, officially designated as Deep Space Linguistic Research Outpost E7 in Earth Science Ministry documents, and unofficially called the Fishbowl by Naomi, orbited a nameless dwarf star at the edge of charted space. Its primary purpose was to monitor and analyze potential communication signals from the neighboring Cygnus arm, where theoretical intelligent life might exist. So far, the only intelligent life Naomi had encountered was the semi-sentient mold growing in the hydroponics bay that seemed suspiciously attracted to her collection of classical literature. "Morning, Benedict," Naomi mumbled to the station's AI as she shuffled to the galley in her thermal socks. "Anything exciting happen while I slept? First contact, alien invasion, surprise birthday party." Benedict, named after the linguist Benedict Anderson, responded with the same measured patience it always did. "Good morning, Specialist Reed. Station systems nominal. No anomalous signals detected. Your coffee is prepared to specifications." "You're a heartless enabler of my caffeine addiction," Naomi said, accepting the steaming mug. "And I love you for it." She settled into the observation deck, where the vast panorama of stars stretched before her like scattered diamonds on black velvet. 17 months alone with only an AI and occasional supply drops had changed her relationship with silence. Sometimes it felt like a meditation, other times like a physical pressure against her eardrums. Today it felt heavy, and Naomi found herself speaking aloud just to hear a human voice. "Log entry 517, she said, activating her personal recorder. "Still here, still listening. The universe continues its stubborn refusal to say hello back." She was halfway through updating her research on proto-linguistic patterns in stellar radiation when Benedict interrupted. "Specialist Reed, anomalous energy signature detected." Naomi straightened, coffee forgotten, source. "Unknown, localized approximately 500 meters from the station's north quadrant. Energy pattern does not match known phenomena." She moved to the primary console, fingers flying across the holographic interface. "Show me visual." The external cameras revealed nothing at first, just the familiar starscape and the cratered surface of the asteroid Epsilon 7 was anchored to. Then, a shimmer, like heat rising from desert sand. The shimmer intensified, folding space around itself until it opened like an iris, revealing a swirling vortex of deep indigo light. "Benedict, are we recording this?" Naomi's heart hammered against her ribs. "All sensors active, Specialist." From the center of the vortex emerged a vessel, if it could be called that. Unlike the utilitarian angles of Earth ships, this craft flowed like liquid mercury, its surface rippling with iridescent patterns reminiscent of abalone shell. It hovered momentarily before settling on the asteroid's surface with impossible gentleness. "Benedict, activate first contact protocols." "First contact protocols engaged. Would you like me to initiate communication sequence?" Naomi hesitated. Protocol dictated she should wait for Earth Command's instructions, but the nearest relay station was 4 days away by fastest transmission. By then, whatever opportunity this presented might be lost. "No, I'll handle this. Just keep recording and maintain station security." She moved toward the airlock, hands trembling as she secured her EVA suit. Years of training and a lifetime of imagination hadn't prepared her for this moment. Outside, the vacuum embraced her with its familiar emptiness as she approached the visitor. Up close, the vessel seemed almost alive, its surface patterns shifting subtly like oil on water. There was no visible entrance, no obvious technology, just smooth, flowing elegance. Then, as if sensing her presence, a section of the hull simply parted, revealing a figure silhouetted against a soft amber light. The being stepped forward, not with the cautious hesitation Naomi might have expected from a first contact scenario, but with the fluid grace of someone entering a familiar room. It had a humanoid shape, though taller and more slender than most humans, with proportions that suggested both strength and lightness. Its skin was the color of burnished copper with faint luminescent patterns tracing what might be veins or perhaps some kind of natural bioluminescence. Most striking were the eyes, large, almond-shaped, and a deep violet that seemed to shift like nebulae as they fixed on Naomi. Where a human would have hair, this being had something like tendrils, halfway between hair and delicate tentacles, that moved slightly despite the lack of atmosphere. Naomi raised her hand slowly in what she hoped was a universal gesture of greeting. The being mirrored her perfectly, then added a slight incline of its head. "Benedict," she whispered into her comm, "are you seeing this?" "Affirmative, Specialist Reed. Visitor appears to be attempting communication." The being stepped closer, seemingly untroubled by the vacuum. It reached toward its throat and activated something that created a bubble of atmosphere around them both. "You, listen," the being said in a melodic voice that seemed to resonate directly in Naomi's mind rather than through her ears. "Long time, we watch." Naomi's linguistic training kicked in through her astonishment. "Yes," she said slowly, enunciating clearly. "I am listening, my name is Naomi." The being touched its chest, Tavril, then it gestured to the stars above them and back to Naomi. "You, alone here, why?" "To learn," Naomi replied, struggling to maintain her professional composure. "To understand the universe, to find others." Tavril's expression shifted in a way that might have been a smile. "Found." Over the next several hours, Naomi guided Tavril through the station, experiencing the strange joy of seeing her mundane surroundings through alien eyes. Everything fascinated Tavril: the hydroponics bay, the library of physical books Naomi had brought for comfort, even the recycled water system. Communication remained challenging. Tavril seemed to understand concepts more readily than words themselves, responding to emotions and intentions rather than specific language. When traditional methods failed, they developed a system of gestures, drawings, and simple tones that bridged the gap between their species. By station nightfall, they had established a rudimentary vocabulary of shared understanding. Tavril explained, through a combination of sketched star maps and carefully chosen words, that they came from a civilization in what Earth astronomers called the Andromeda Galaxy. "How did you travel so far?" Naomi asked, demonstrating distance with her hands. Tavril touched the center of their forehead. "Mind fold space. Think here," they pointed to a distant star. "Be here." "Teleportation, wormhole technology." Tavril considered this, then shook their head. "Not machine, life skill, learn young." That night, as Tavril rested in the quarters Naomi had hastily converted for them, she recorded her log with shaking hands. Day 517, supplemental. "Everything has changed. We're not alone. They're not just out there, they're here, and they've been watching us." Tavril says they're scholars studying emerging civilizations. They consider humanity promising but concerning, at least that's my best translation. She paused, looking at the closed door behind which her visitor rested. "Tavril is extraordinary. There's an elegance to their thought processes that makes me feel simultaneously primitive and perfectly understood. When our languages fail, something else takes over, some deeper communication I can't quite name." Naomi touched her temple, remembering the moment Tavril had demonstrated their species' form of greeting, a light touch that had somehow conveyed a cascade of impressions. The warm light of twin suns, the sound of crystalline structures singing in the wind, the feeling of belonging to something vast and ancient. "I should be terrified," she whispered, "or at minimum maintaining scientific objectivity. Instead, I feel like someone dying of thirst who's just discovered water." Outside her window, the nameless stars continued their silent vigil. But for the first time in 17 months, Naomi no longer felt alone in their presence. Something had changed in the fabric of her universe, something that both thrilled and unsettled her. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a quiet voice reminded her that Earth Command would have quite a lot to say about this unauthorized first contact when they found out. By the third week of Tavril's stay on Epsilon Station 7, Naomi had learned several important things about her alien visitor. First, Tavril had no concept of personal space, at least not as humans understood it. During their language sessions, Tavril would drift closer until mere inches separated them, those luminous violet eyes fixed on Naomi's face with an intensity that made her heart race in ways she blamed on xenobiological stress responses. Second, Tavril's perception of time differed radically from human understanding. What felt like minutes to Naomi might be experienced as hours by Tavril, who once spent what Naomi thought was 20 minutes simply watching a water droplet form and fall in the hydroponics bay. Later, Tavril had seemed surprised to learn only a brief time had passed. "Your species hurries through moments," Tavril observed one morning, those tendril-like appendages rippling in what Naomi had come to recognize as amusement. "You miss the universes within small things." The third thing Naomi learned, the thing that kept her awake during station night cycles, was that the mandatory report to Earth Command couldn't be delayed much longer without severe consequences. "Benedict, how many days until the next scheduled transmission window?" she asked, knowing the answer perfectly well. "Specialist read, the next mandatory check-in with Earth Command is scheduled in 36 hours, the AI replied. "Protocol requires full disclosure of anomalous events, including first contact scenarios." Naomi sighed, watching Tavril across the common area. The alien was absorbed in examining her collection of paper books, those slender copper fingers tracing each page with reverence. Poetry, Tavril said without looking up. Your species puts stars in words. Some of us try, Naomi replied, momentarily distracted from her dilemma. She crossed the room and sat beside Tavril, their shoulders almost touching. That's Pablo Neruda, 20th century. His love poems are famous. Tavril tilted their head, a gesture they'd adopted from Naomi. What is famous? Known by many peoples, remembered. Ah, Tavril considered this. In my world we do not seek to be remembered, we seek to remember well. Their improvised language had evolved rapidly, a hybrid of English gesture and the musical tones of Tavril's native speech. Naomi had started calling it bridge speak in her linguistic notes, though she'd created a separate, unofficial journal where she documented the way certain phrases made her feel when Tavril spoke them, like warm honey in her chest, like fingertips brushing the back of her neck. Benedict, mute observation protocols for 1 hour, Naomi said suddenly. Warning, suspension of observation protocols violates. Override read Alpha 7. The AI fell silent. Naomi turned to Tavril, lowering her voice despite the fact that they were truly alone. Earth Command doesn't know you're here, she admitted. I'm supposed to report your presence immediately. But you have not, it wasn't a question. No, Naomi rubbed her temples. First contact protocols are complex. Earth might demand you remain here for study. They might quarantine this station for years. They might, she broke off, uncomfortable with the other possibilities she'd been contemplating. Tavril set the book aside and faced her fully. You fear for me. I fear for both of us, Naomi corrected. Humans have a complicated history with the unknown. Tavril was quiet for a long moment. Then, with deliberate slowness, they extended their hand, palm up. It was a gesture Naomi had taught them during their first week, an invitation of trust. May I show you something? Naomi hesitated, then placed her hand in Tavril's. Immediately, a warm sensation spread up her arm, and the observation deck around them seemed to blur. Close your eyes, Tavril whispered. She did. Instantly, images flooded her mind, not like memories or dreams, but with the visceral quality of present experience. She was standing on a clifftop overlooking a vast ocean of what appeared to be liquid crystal. Above her, 3 moons hung in a lavender sky, and distant spires of living architecture rose from islands scattered across the gleaming sea. My home, Tavril's voice echoed in her mind, the 5th world of Eridanes. The scene shifted, and Naomi found herself in what seemed to be a chamber composed entirely of semi-transparent crystal. Dozens of beings like Tavril moved through the space, their tendrils intertwining when they passed each other, some form of greeting or communication, she realized. My research collective, Tavril explained. We study emergent intelligences across the galaxies. We watch, we learn, we protect. Protect from what? Naomi asked, startled to find she could speak within this vision. The scene changed again, this time to a barren planetscape. What might once have been a civilization lay in ruins, and the sky above roiled with unnatural storms. From themselves, Tavril said softly, not all who reach for the stars are ready for their power. The vision dissolved, and Naomi found herself back on the station, her hand still in Tavril's, tears streaming down her face though she hadn't realized she was crying. You showed me your memories, she whispered. We call it thought-sharing, Tavril said, gently brushing a tear from her cheek. The closest translation in your language might be soul-speaking. It is how we truly know one another. Naomi's scientific mind raced with questions about telepathic capabilities and cross-species neural compatibility, but something deeper in her responded to the intimacy of what had just happened. Can I share with you too? She asked. Tavril's expression softened. If you wish, though the first experience can be disorienting for species unaccustomed to thought-sharing. I want to try, Naomi insisted. How do I begin? Think of a memory, something meaningful that shaped you. Focus on it completely, then imagine opening a door between us. Naomi closed her eyes again, focusing on a memory she hadn't revisited in years. Her grandfather's observatory in rural New Mexico, where she'd first fallen in love with the stars. She remembered the smell of the desert night, the cool metal of the telescope against her small fingers, her grandfather's voice explaining constellations and the possibility of other worlds. She imagined opening a door between her mind and Tavril's, and suddenly felt a warm presence entering her thoughts, not invasive but welcome, like sunlight filling a room. Beautiful, Tavril whispered both in her mind and aloud. This is where your journey began. When the connection faded, they sat in silence, still holding hands. Something fundamental had shifted between them, a bridge crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. I have revealed myself to you, Tavril said at last. And you to me, this is a bond my people do not create lightly. What does it mean? Naomi asked, aware that her pulse had quickened. It means I trust you with my true self, Tavril replied, and that I will protect you even from my own people if necessary. The implications of that statement hung in the air between them until Benedict's voice broke the moment. Specialist read incoming transmission from Earth Command, Priority Alpha. Naomi withdrew her hand reluctantly, put it through to my private terminal. She stood smoothing her uniform with suddenly trembling hands. I need to take this alone, will you be all right? Tavril nodded, I will continue with the poetry. In her quarters, Naomi activated the secure terminal to find the stern face of Director Jameson filling the screen. Specialist read, your last 3 data packets show unusual energy fluctuations near your station. Explain. Naomi had prepared for this moment, rehearsing explanations and deflections, but after the intimacy of thought-sharing with Tavril, deception felt impossible. Director, I've made first contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence, she said, her voice steadier than she expected. They arrived 3 weeks ago. They're peaceful, a researcher like me. The director's expression didn't change, but the lengthy silence that followed spoke volumes. This is now a Code Omega situation, he said finally. The Artemis is being diverted to your location, ETA 96 hours. Maintain contact but extract no further information until the containment team arrives. Full quarantine protocols are in effect. Acknowledge. Naomi's mouth went dry. Code Omega meant military involvement, the worst possible scenario. Director, that's not necessary, Tavril is. Acknowledge the order, Specialist read. Acknowledged, she said, the word bitter in her mouth. As soon as the transmission ended, Naomi rushed back to the common area, only to find Tavril already waiting, the poetry book set aside. Your people are coming, they said simply. How did you? I felt your distress, Tavril rose gracefully. It resonated through our bond. They're sending a military vessel. Tavril, you don't understand what that means. They'll consider you a potential threat. They'll dissect my thoughts as if they were specimens, Tavril finished. Yes, I understand more than you realize. We have observed many first contacts across many worlds. Naomi began packing. You should leave now before they arrive. If I leave, you will face consequences for not immediately reporting me. She stopped, struck by the realization that Tavril was right. At minimum, she'd lose her position. At worst, she'd face charges of treason. I don't care, she said and meant it. Tavril approached her slowly, those violet eyes searching her face. There is another possibility, they said. My research pod will detect my extended absence soon. They will send a gathering vessel. How soon? Perhaps 3 of your Earth days. Naomi did the calculation quickly. Before the Artemis arrives, could your vessel take both of us? The question hung between them, its implications enormous. Tavril's tendrils rippled with what might have been surprise or concern. You would leave your world, your peoples. Naomi thought of Earth, a planet she hadn't set foot on in over 2 years. She thought of her sparse connections there, her apartment in storage, her career that had led her to this isolated outpost because she'd always felt more at home among stars than people. Then she looked at Tavril, this being who had crossed galaxies and shown her worlds beyond imagination, who had shared mind and memory with her, who understood her in ways no human ever had. I think, she said slowly, that I've been waiting my whole life for a reason to do exactly that. Something like a smile transformed Tavril's features. They extended their hand once more, and when Naomi took it, a new vision bloomed between them, not of past or present, but of possible futures stretching like constellations across the canvas of their joined minds. That night, as Tavril meditated in the observation deck's artificial starlight, Naomi made the most consequential log entry of her career. Final log, Specialist Naomi read. By the time Earth Command receives this, I will have made my choice. I came to the edge of space to find new forms of communication, new ways of understanding the universe. I never expected the universe would reach back and offer to understand me in return. She paused, watching Tavril through the doorway, their copper skin gleaming beneath the starlight. Some will call what I'm about to do desertion or even treason. I call it the most human choice possible, to follow connection, understanding, and something I'm not ready to name yet, but that feels like the starting point of all meaningful discoveries. She ended the recording and began systematically downloading the station's research data. Whatever happened next, humanity deserved to know what she had learned here. About language, about connection, about the vastness that both separated and united intelligent life across the cosmos. Outside the viewport, the endless dark between stars no longer seemed empty to Naomi's eyes. It was filled with possibilities, bridges waiting to be built, languages waiting to be learned, and perhaps most surprising of all, a hand reaching across the void to hold her own.